Three leading candidates are vying for the Democratic nomination for governor. Vicky Cayetano, Josh Green, and Kai Kahele will appear together in the PBS Hawaii studio as they fight for your vote. Find out where each candidate stands on the issues and why they want to lead the state. You can submit your questions online or by phone during an extended 90-minute edition of Insights. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yunji Denise. For the first time in 8 years, Hawaii will have a new governor after David Ige completes his 2 elected terms. This year's field of Democratic candidates features some very familiar faces, including our Lieutenant Governor, U.S. Congressman, and a former First Lady of Hawaii. But before he or she can think about moving into the top floor of the state capitol, they need to win the primary election first. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests, and before we start, the seating arrangements and the order of introductions were determined ahead of time by random drawing. Vicky Cayetano is an entrepreneur and business executive who co-founded United Laundry Services more than 3 decades ago. It's currently the largest commercial laundry company in the state with branches on 3 islands. She's a former Hawaii First Lady, married to then-Governor Ben Cayetano. She's the 6th of 9 children, and her family immigrated to the U.S. from the Philippines when she was 3 years old. Dr. Josh Green was elected Lieutenant Governor in 2018. Prior to that, he served in the State House for 4 years and then the State Senate for 10. He's an emergency room physician who still practices on Hawaii Island. Born in New York and raised in Pennsylvania, he was stationed in Hawaii as part of the National Health Service Corps back in the year 2000. During the pandemic, he was named as the state's COVID-19 liaison. And Congressman Kai Kahele was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives District 2 seat in 2020. Prior to that, he served in the state Senate. He's a commercial airline pilot for Hawaiian Airlines and a lieutenant colonel and combat veteran in the Hawaii Air National Guard. Born and raised on Hawaii Island, he went to Hilo High School and the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where he played for the UH Rainbow Warriors men's volleyball team. Also on the ballot for the Democratic primary are David Burgoyne, Richard Kim, Clyde Luman, and Van Tanabe. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have a lot of questions to get to, so I want to get straight to it. Congressman, I want to start with you. In the last 24 hours, you've been dominating the news cycle. Your campaign has, perhaps not for the best reasons. You premised your campaign on raising public money, for small donations rather, and leveraging that with public donations from public campaign financing rather from the state. But somehow that fell through. What happened, and what are you saying to your supporters about what went wrong?
You know, to my supporters and the thousands across Hawaii that have made a small dollar donation to our campaign over the last 45 days, I want to say mahalo nui loa. You know, our grassroots message has not changed. And in fact, I am more determined than ever to win the August 13th primary. Public financing is tough. It's not easy in this state. And missing an important filing and paperwork that needed to be done was my fault. And it's a learning experience that I'll learn from and I'll take to the office of the governor to make public financing easier in this state for all candidates to participate. Our core message does not change, and that is to get money out of politics. People are tired of the status quo, and I'm looking forward to winning the hearts and minds of the people of Hawaii over the next few weeks. And so, you know, although it's a setback for our campaign, the outpouring of support in the last 24 hours has been absolutely incredible. We have raised more small dollar donations in the last 24 hours than we have in the last month. And so it's validation to me that people are hungry for change. They're hungry for new leadership. They're sick and tired of the status quo. They're sick and tired of money in politics, the unprecedented amount of corruption and indictments in Hawaii politics today has to change. And I believe my candidacy is the catalyst for that change.
Lieutenant Governor, I have a campaign finance question for you, but perhaps on the opposite side, you've received the most campaign contributions. You've also received top union endorsements. How will you make sure that you're not beholden to your donors and to these organizations?
It's a great question. Thank you for having me, Yunji. I've had over 4,000 unique donors, and that is something that touches my heart. From all across our state, it's extraordinary to get donations from social workers and firefighters and teachers, and the teachers union support. Those are real people here in the state. I feel validated that I've worked hard for people and that they believe in me. I've led by example for many years. I was asked to be the head of the COVID response, and so of course, lots of people who saw my work and who ultimately believed I did a good job supported me. I've never been beholden to anyone. Sometimes people have looked at me as an outsider, but it's been very gratifying to serve as Lieutenant Governor in hopefully an honorable way, and I would do that as governor if I'm chosen. I've been at this for quite some time now, running for governor, asking for people's support, asking for their trust, asking for their faith, and I think that that's what I earned over the course of the COVID experience. I actually ended up in everyone's lives and in their homes over these last 2 years. I think we spent a lot of time together, you and I, and people in all of the networks, they saw me. I was in people's living rooms. I was there trying to share how we got through this crisis. And overall, I believe that that's why I've received quite a lot of support. But I always am aware of what people's concerns are, and I recognize what the Congressman has concerns about too. We all do.
Okay. Mrs. Cayetano, you've never held elected office in Hawaii, so why start with the top job?
Well, at this stage of my life and what I can bring to the table, I feel it's the most, I've been an executive, a leader for over 34 years, all my life, and looking at the critical situation of our state, I'm running here to really make a difference. And that's why I feel that I'm going to bring my results-driven, proven leadership skills of creating jobs, to this position. I believe that the state of Hawaii is at such a critical juncture that the traditional ways of leading it and the ideas that we've leaned on from the past are not going to resolve the problems that we keep talking about. My fellow opponents here, one has been in office for 18 years, Lieutenant Governor, and Congressman has been in for 10 years. And so we keep talking about the same issues with every election cycle, but where are the results? That's why I'm running.
Okay, well,
Can I make a quick correction?
Please.
With all due respect, I have not been in elected office for 10 years. I was appointed after my dad died in 2016. I've been in office for less than 7 years.
If I may also add, I actually feel that it's been an honor to serve for 4 years in the House and then 10 years in the Senate and then 4 years as Lieutenant Governor. It's that experience that I think will recommend me to understand the issues better than most, and that will help me.
Well, let's stay with you and let's get to those issues. What do you think is the #1 priority and the biggest issue facing our state, and what would you do specifically as governor to address it?
I think it's affordable housing, Yunji. There are so many huge issues that we have in Hawaii, but we don't have enough nurses because they can't afford housing in our state. We don't have enough teachers. We're always 1,200 teachers short because we don't pay them enough to afford housing. So affordable housing constantly resonates as the things we have to do. If we can't get affordable housing in place, our next generation goes away. I've got a 15-year-old daughter, soon will be off to college. I want her to come back to be able to afford a home. So what will we do? There's a lot of things that have to be done on affordable housing. First and foremost, we have to build a lot of housing. We're at least 50,000 units short in our state. Building means we have to move past some of the barriers. It's been a disaster with the DPP, the permitting process. It's been very difficult at the state level to get lands ready for building. So building is first. Second of all, we have to use Department of Hawaiian Homelands to our advantage. We have right now 27,000 individuals on the list for Homelands assignment for Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Those 27,000 people should be given homes and an opportunity. There's 203,000 acres. They can be used, and we can be positively discriminating to give that land to people. $600 million came from the legislature to jumpstart that right now. We have to be dynamic there. And then finally, illegal Airbnbs owned on the mainland by mainlanders. That's a problem because there's over 40,000 illegal units that are taking housing out of circulation for our people. We should have those as rentals, and so there has to be very dynamic action on all of these fronts. If we solve the housing crisis, we can move to the homeless crisis more easily. But this is the biggest issue, I think, for us.
Mrs. Cayetano, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the state, and what would you do to address it?
Well, I believe it's several things, and one is affordable housing, without a doubt. But the other thing is that we need to look at our economy. You know, after COVID, granted, the case counts have been reasonably managed, but what we're not talking enough is about how devastated our small business community in particular, how much we've suffered in our economy. And that combined with what our children have experienced, you know, the years that they've lost, there's no question those two things have impacted us. So with affordable housing, I appreciate what Lieutenant Governor is saying. However, I would say this, I think you have to tackle what the problems are really in detail, such as the chokehold that the government has on permitting, planning. That whole process takes way too much time to get affordable housing or any kind of housing done. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And I appreciate about the illegal rentals, but you know, how do we mandate? How do we get rid of these owners in order to move people in? So I think we got to talk about the government structure. It is often the permitting regulation process is often at the heart of the problem. And the same way of doing things have been, you know, what we've been dealing with for many years. And that, I think, is something we need a new mindset. We need common sense, practical solutions to address these problems.
Congressman, what do you think is the biggest issue facing
I also
our
believe affordable housing is one of the biggest issues facing Hawaii today and Hawaii's residents. You know, $1.2, $1.5 million for a single family home is unsustainable, Yunji. It's going to be unsustainable for your kids, for my kids, for the Lieutenant Governor's kids. They're not going to be able to find or purchase a home here. And many are leaving Hawaii. We have the largest out-migration of local families leaving Hawaii because they've lost hope. I believe we need, on the island of Oahu, 2 housing plans. One housing plan that starts in Halawa and goes to Waikiki. And it is why I've taken the position that I do not support building a stadium in Halawa. I would rather build 10,000 homes and commercial, mixed-use, workforce housing on the Halawa parcel. I want to build a stadium out in West Oahu. I want to complete the rail line to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. But I believe we need to develop dense vertical housing from Halawa to Waikiki on every state, county parcel, working together with the Ali'i Trust and Kamehameha schools. Government needs to put in the necessary sewer and water and electrical infrastructure to develop vertical housing where we can create live, work, play environments along the rail line where you don't need to have a car if you live in a dense vertical housing model between Halawa and Waikiki. And then I think we need to have another secondary housing model in what I would consider the rural or the second congressional district part of the island, where government can also put in infrastructure, but like the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, whether it's land use, the Land Use Commission, planning, permitting, those are things that we've been challenged with for decades. But we haven't addressed it as a legislative body, and we haven't had the political courage to address those difficult issues. Working together with our developers that know how to develop housing, we need more LIHTC funds. We have a historic amount of money in the Rental Housing Relief Fund. We have Ohana zones that can help us create extremely low housing for those 60% AMI or below. And I think the Lieutenant Governor is spot on. The Department of Hawaiian Homelands plays a critical role in the economic prosperity and the housing opportunities for Native Hawaiians. If we can address that 28,000 list of Native Hawaiians that have been on that list for decades, we can get them out of the residential marketplace, and we can get and free up more affordable housing for more people. DHHL plays a critical role in that.
Well, I'm interested to hear from both of you if you agree on the stadium. What are your thoughts? This comes at the same day when the governor just signed a bill to fund that project. So what are your thoughts? Do you think we should have a stadium, or should that go to housing?
It should actually be not an either or. We should build a stadium because every state should have a stadium, and I think that the Congressman also said that we should have a stadium. So we agree in that regard. Where it should be is up for debate. Having a stadium where the plan's already gone in makes a lot of sense, as long as there's also housing around that. But the rail has to be utilized over time. So I want to see a dynamic stadium because I want to see these opportunities for our young generation. I want to see people have rugby tournaments here and soccer tournaments and maybe the occasional football game and the concerts that come and all the youth soccer. All these things have to come back. It's a part of culture During COVID, we lost a lot of things. We lost that time together. We lost opportunities to have these big events and high school football. Those things went away, and we saw how impactful it was to not have them. So having a stadium, yes, absolutely we should build housing there as well. And we have to build housing all over. The Congressman was right. It's not just in the urban core. It also has to be in the neighbor islands, because we have to really change how we view Hawaii. A lot of people are working from home. They don't want to live necessarily in the city, but we have so much at stake. If we don't build the housing quickly, we're going to lose a generation from Hawaii.
Let's get to that stadium question. Do you think that it should be built at Halawa?
I believe so. You know, I think part of the problem really with us is we don't prioritize. And if we say affordable housing is a priority, then that's what it should be. I would also be very sensitive about making sure that we don't have another rail project that ends up into the billions from the original, estimate. This is where government always fails. We're not practical. We don't have the humility to acknowledge what we don't know, and we think we can do everything. And I think it's really important to look at this closely, but I, without a doubt, believe that affordable housing should be the first priority, and that the stadium property would be better suited for that.
But Yunji, if affordable housing is the #1 issue, then let's build housing. Mm-hmm. Why are we gonna soak $500 million into a stadium when we haven't even finished rail? Let's build housing and put people in homes.
I want to get to COVID. Each of you has said that you oppose having kids wear mandatory masking in schools. However, DOE Superintendent Keith Hayashi has said that if the masks are taken out of schools, that means that if there's a COVID exposure in the classroom would then have to shut down for 5 days. So are you willing to take that risk? Are you accepting that scenario if it means having no masks? We'll start with you.
Well, I think that, again, with the Pfizer vaccine now for children, that will be a level of protection that we didn't have before. In this situation, there's never going to be the perfect solution. What do you trade off? The daily mask wearing? And that creates, as I've said, I've seen that in my own grandchildren, how disruptive it is for them. Or do you take the chance on that? I think we do. What's important is that we need to be able to pivot if, in fact, there are cases or the situation becomes more critical. However, I believe that we need to move forward with that risk and see how we can balance having our children in school without wearing masks.
Lieutenant Governor, are you willing to accept that scenario of having kids pulled out of school and then going back to school, especially when we see these new variants on the horizon?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm willing to accept the risk. I think we'll follow the science. I don't think we can afford to have children masked for another school year, and that's why I've taken that position. I also spoke directly with the superintendent and expressed that even in the last part of this school year. I thought it was time to move on. Children have lost a lot of developmental milestones. It's critical that they get back on track. It's very difficult for them. Moreover, what we did while I was the COVID liaison is we made sure our teachers and all the people that work as adults at the schools across the campuses, that they got vaccinated, that they were protected so that they did not get as severe disease if they caught COVID. That's why we ended up having the lowest mortality rate in the country. Children, fortunately, have had some exposure, but they have not gotten severely sick. So in my conversations daily, weekly, monthly with the heads over at Kapiolani, they've been able to express what the risk is. And so they're comfortable enough to have our children go back to school. They think they and the Pediatric Association across our state and country feel it's safe, and that's good enough for me. We do have to move on as a society. What you'll see with coronaviruses is it's usually a 5-year trend, and the first and second year are quite severe. We had the worst experience with the Delta variant, but in subsequent variants, and now with the Omicron BA4 and BA5, it's much less severe. Far fewer people are in the hospital, and certainly far fewer kids are getting severely ill. My kids, one of my kids had COVID, and he was fine. We were scared, like parents are scared. He caught it at school, but we got through it, and we needed him to be educated. So that's our experience.
Okay, what do you think? Is it worth having to have these kids perhaps having to quarantine at home if there's an exposure because they weren't wearing a mask in the classroom?
I also agree. Our kids have suffered over the last 2 years. My little 6-year-old daughter started kindergarten distance learning and eventually came back to school. She goes to Navahi o Kalani Opu, a public charter school on Hawaii Island, but it has been extremely challenging for our kids. We have to mitigate the risk. We have to take personal responsibility. It's also a responsibility of parents to ensure that if our kids are sick, they don't go to school. And at Navahi, every day we have to screen or do a screening for our kids before they go to school on our phones. And when we go to school, we show that screening app to the teachers that greet them every day. We can mitigate the risk. We have to move on from COVID. I also agree, working together with the superintendent to make sure that he and the DOE has the appropriate policy for our 180,000 students that make up our public education system is really important. Working with the Department of Health, working and trusting the science is also critical as well. And I think that's a unique role that the governor plays, working together with the superintendent.
I want to get to these viewer questions because they're piling in, and thank you for sending them. Keep calling them in, and Facebook and all the other channels to get to us. There are 4 questions here and actually many more on TMT. So Congressman, we'll start with you. Caller from Hilo, where do you stand on TMT, billed or not? As governor, do you let TMT proceed? Chadwick and Ruth and Euclid, both over email, basically wanting to know what is your opinion of the TMT project on Mauna Kea?
So I do not support the 30-meter telescope as it is currently proposed, and I never have. I support astronomy as it exists today, and I support astronomy, hopefully, for the long-term future in Hawaii. It's a critical part of our economy. It's a critical part, I believe, of our culture and the Native Hawaiian culture and navigation. But it's a multi-pronged and multi-faceted issue we have to deal with. I support changing the management of Mauna Kea and the bill that the legislature worked on, which is going to become law through Governor Ige. We have to go in a new direction on Mauna Kea, but Mauna Kea and the 30-meter telescope is an underlying catalyst for a larger issue that exists in this state, one that we need to address. Otherwise, other projects like TMT, which I believe was set up for failure years ago, are going to struggle in this state, and it's going to continue to divide our families. It's going to continue to divide our communities, and we have to address this issue before we can move on. It's the same issue at Makua Valley, the same issue with Red Hill. The 30-meter telescope is the catalyst, and we have to address it.
Mrs. Cayetano, do you agree?
So I don't agree with Congressman. And when you say that Mauna Kea is a catalyst, I think Red Hill, which has been a problem for decades, and our failure to address that, along with DHHL, the promises made to homesteaders and still not being fulfilled, those are all the things that have added to the issues. There's no question that we need to address the problems and the issues that the Native Hawaiians have been bringing up and that we have not listened to. But I believe that if we support astronomy, we need to support the 30-meter telescope. And while House Bill 2024 it doesn't look like Governor Ige will veto, I would say that it needs a deeper legal review of it, because when you look at where it states for the 11-member panel that's going to oversee the management of this, overseeing it over Department of Land and Natural Resources and all those other departments, one has to really take a deeper look at that to see if that will withstand a legal challenge on the constitutionality of it.
What do you say to those folks who have called in about Mauna Kea? Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, Yunji, I think we should complete big projects like the TMT, but we have to do them right. And that's where I would echo some of the statements that the Congressman made. If you don't do things right, if you don't show proper leadership and respect, and you don't listen with respect, these projects are doomed from the beginning. We could have had a great success with the TMT like we did with the Hokulea. The incredible experience of voyaging, the leadership that the Hawaiian people have offered, that is amazing. It could have been something we all embraced, because I also support astronomy and I'm a science person, but we have to do it right. And we absolutely can bridge the gap between cultures, but we have to get there through trust. We have to get there through respect. The fact that we haven't built the homes in and around the mountain, Mauna Kea, where we could have, where Department of Hawaiian Homelands could have had successes and people could feel like they were treated with respect as equals, I don't believe you would have seen protests. I don't believe you would have seen opposition, because what is being expressed is a deep sense of mistreatment. And so I do want to build projects like the TMT because that moves Hawaii forward. I do think that supports our next generation, but you will not get there if you don't have strong leadership, and that's what I believe should be done.
So it sounds like yes with reservation.
Well, yes with reservations has become quite an annoying thing at the legislature. It's yes, we should move forward on big projects. We should have finished the rail, but we should have finished it in a good fashion and on a budget. We should have gotten to a place where the Hawaiian community wanted to build the TMT because there were already a lot of telescopes there, but we didn't bring the other telescopes down adequately. We didn't do the hard work that DLNR had to do to get that done. We didn't get the housing done. We didn't show respect through the leases that were done. When you don't show respect, you will not get past these impasses. And that is what I will bring. As the physician on the Big Island, I will bring respect the way I did to the people, and I hope that that will break these impasses.
Go ahead.
We have great telescopes on Mauna Kea today. The most powerful ground-based telescopes exist on the Mauna right now. The Twin Keck, Canada, France, Subaru. These telescopes there want certainty that they're going to be there so that they can invest in these telescopes and make them in their current footprint even stronger and allow them to look deeper into the universe. The 30-meter telescope is dividing our state. It is dividing our communities. Lieutenant Governor is correct. It is about respect. But it's also how astronomy is constructed here in Hawaii. When I was in the state senate, I called for the moving the Institute for Astronomy to Hilo. I called for more astronomical viewing time for UH Hilo's astronomy students. We called for more community benefits package, so we had funding that could support Hawaii Island communities and all the programs that people need. Put more kids in Punanaleo, help out the Boys and Girls Club of the Big Island. You know, we need to move in a different direction of how we manage and protect our special places. And Mauna Kea is one of many other issues that we have to deal with in this state. And that's how I feel about astronomy.
Mrs. Cayetano, I want to talk about something that you brought up as your most important issue. You said it's the cost of living, it's the economy. In preparation for the show, I looked it up, and the average cost of private preschool in Hawaii is actually more than in-state tuition at the University of Hawaii, if you can believe that. I believe it. I got 2 young kids, and I know those bills are high. So that cost of early education for children hits families when they can least afford it. What would you do as a governor to help address that particular issue? Because it does have a ripple effect on a family's ability to work and so many of the other things that I know that we're going to talk about tonight.
Absolutely. And as I answer that, I would like to get back to Congressman's last statement. But, you know, I think that universal preschool is very much supported in Hawaii. And I'm glad to see that the governor has allocated, Governor Ige's allocated funding to begin that. So I absolutely think that that's heading in the right direction, especially if we put preschools, start these preschools in areas and zip codes where they need it most. The other thing I would really try to encourage is to look at the private sector and to see if we can incentivize employers so that they can offer preschool or early childhood, affordable, childhood care to their employees. These are things that we need to look at in order to, as you say, support the people who need it most, because childcare is very expensive.
Lieutenant Governor, what are your thoughts on the early education piece that's really missing here in Hawaii?
I support it completely. I was so pleased that $200 million was allocated this year to early education. It's way overdue. For every dollar that we spend on early education, it yields $7 of reward for our adolescents and our adults and our economy going forward. I would also say this, and this is a personal thing for me, early education saved my life. I was born and didn't meet my developmental milestones for 2 years. I didn't speak. My family ultimately got me medical consultation, and they found out that I was deaf. And so I was very, very lucky to get great health care, began to speak, but slowly. And my family, my mom and dad, put me into early education at the age of 2.5. And that was what enabled me over time to catch up. Otherwise, I may have lost all of the opportunities I had in my life. And so this has been signature to me for my entire existence. So I think those opportunities are critical. They're economically critical to families, especially a lot of single dads and moms. They have to have help. but also if we can get early education in place, our children will do much better and be literate at ages 5, 6, and 7. Our schools will not suffer the delays that they have in the classroom where we're short on teachers. We get ahead much faster. So that's what we got to do. And the last thing I'd like to say is I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm strongly considering handing a lot of this responsibility off to whomever wins as lieutenant governor, because I think it's so important that the lieutenant governor has a key role, and this is so central to what we're going to do. I'd like to work hand in hand with that person.
Congressman Kahele, you're not going to find anyone who opposes early education.
Absolutely not.
This is something that we've been talking about as a state for quite some time, but it has not happened yet despite widespread support. So what could your office do differently to make it happen right away for families?
Well, from a foundational perspective, nothing is a stronger indicator of being prepared for one's future than education. Regardless of what your life success will be, education is foundational to that success. The sooner we can start our kids in their educational journey, their pathway, their development, the better. So I totally support universal preschool across our state. I would hope that at the end of my administration, that we would have as many preschools built throughout the state of Hawaii. Working together with the School Facilities Authority is really important that those funds go to preschool. I'm also a big supporter of early child care. Our daughters started in an infant program going to preschool from about 15 months old to 3 years, and then they went into preschool. But, like most of us, we had to pay for that. It costs a lot of money. At one time we were paying $1,600 a month for both of our little girls to go to preschool. That's a mortgage. That's rent for someone. And so I think if early childhood education are core values that we have as a state that need to be reflected in our policies, we need to fund it. I also think, and I would hope that we can have these early child care opportunities in our schools, in our public schools, so that a teacher that has a child that needs to go back to work after 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever their situation is, can have their child on the campus. They can go in and feed them on their lunch break. They can go, play with them and see them. And then the preschools are, also built on our campuses. And I think that's really important for that mother-infant relationship, that so many mothers are separated at a very, very early age because they have to go back to work. And that's something we have to address as a state.
Don't you think it would be an ideal opportunity now to also look at the private sector, working with them to see if they can participate in some of the costs? It's very hard to find employees right now with the employment situation, and employers are always looking at what kind of benefits they can give that's meaningful to their employees. And so I would really look at thinking of programs like that as well to incentivize them, especially as while people are returning to work, the fact is many people are still working remotely. So I know that there are a lot of office spaces that are available. Couldn't we partner up with nonprofit organizations, the private sector, to look at doing this so that we can, take care of the child care needs for our children?
I want to bring in a question from Josh on Facebook to the Lieutenant Governor. Obviously, you didn't write this question, but Josh on Facebook asks, we can't have unregulated tourism in Hawaii. What will the governor do with tourism that improves the lives of residents and keeps our land sustainable? We know it's our #1 industry. It is the economic engine, at least for now, for our state. If you go out, to Waikiki or actually anywhere around town, you see the tourists are back, and that comes, for a lot of folks, that's a mixed bag. Yes, for jobs. Don't necessarily like all that comes with it. So what do you say to Josh?
I would say to Josh, we have to have tourism, but it has to be done much better. A couple things. As to regulation, we have to much better regulate the Airbnbs, especially the ones that have kind of floated in illegally. They undercut what we're trying to be about here, which is keep tourism in the right spots, not overwhelm the places that we hold most dear, the beaches, the parks, and so on. I've actually begun to develop a plan which we're calling a climate impact fee, and I'm going to unpack this a little bit for you. It could be a little controversial, but the reason we would have it, this would be a fee for people coming into Hawaii over age 12, $50. The reason it will benefit us as far as tourism goes is because we've had too many tourists at a lower price point recently. So we're not getting any more revenue, but we're getting more and more and more people. And this is even before the Japanese tourists return to Hawaii, and they're very important to our economy. So you apply that fee, you apply that impact fee, and you use it on our open spaces. You use it to help us afford housing. You use it to preserve the climate damage that we've been dealing with. We're going to have roads that have to be repaired. We're going to have beaches that have been eroding. If we don't do something like that, all this cost and this burden is going to fall on our people. The other benefit of that is by increasing the cost slightly of travel to Hawaii, you will reduce the lowest end travelers that are coming on the very bargain basement plane tickets, the bargain basement hotel rooms, which still are bodies that overwhelm, but they don't add much to our economy. And so this is a way to solve two problems: decrease what has become an overwhelming experience with tourism for a lot of people, while increasing revenues for projects that we need. We've been talking about some great ideas that I agree with my colleagues here, but we're going to have to pay for them, and I don't want it to be paid for necessarily by our own taxpayers.
Congressman, what do you think?
Our islands are at capacity. You know, tourism will always be a part of our islands and states' economy, but you know, we saw pre-pandemic 10 million visitors is unsustainable for this state. I think it's a fantastic idea that the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement could potentially be the next marketing agency vehicle where Native Hawaiians are marketing tourism to the world around a sustainable, regenerative tourism model based on Hawaiian values, based on the aloha spirit. People come and have been coming to Hawaii for decades, and they come here because they don't just want to experience our beautiful scenery and our beautiful islands and beaches, but they want to experience the aloha spirit. They want to experience our culture, our values, very similar to the place-based type education that my daughters experience going to a Native Hawaiian charter immersion school. They want to get into our kalo patches. They want to get into our lo'is. They want to figure out how to do la'au lapa'au and lomi lomi. And these are things that we need to incorporate into destination management plans. If you look at the island of Oahu, what are the major tourist destinations we have? Waikiki, Kualoa Ranch, Polynesian Cultural Center. That's all we have. And when you have so many tourists coming to this island, they spill out into our communities, into our beaches, into our parks, into the places where our local families are. So we need to do a much better job of creating a tourism model where we have destination plans that can rebuild, redefine, and reset tourism here in Hawaii. I don't know if you guys have noticed, go down to Waikiki. It doesn't look like the Waikiki I remember. It's not. There's street performers on every single block. There's Big Bird walking down Waikiki. You know, it looks like Santa Monica Pier on a Sunday. That's not what we want to market, but we created that. That has to change. We have homeless all over Waikiki. You know, in different places it smells of urine, and it just makes me so sad that that's what Waikiki looks like. You know, I was over in Lahaina 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, and for the Lahaina parade, and there were hundreds of people at the Lahaina boat pier under the banyan tree, and I went to the bathroom, and I was shocked to find one urinal was broken. Never have toilet paper on a Saturday when there were hundreds of people there. I want to run for governor of Hawaii to fix the bathroom in Lahaina.
Well, let's get to Mrs. Cayetano and your thoughts. Do you agree with the Lieutenant Governor's proposal of charging a fee upon entry to the state? Yes,
I think that makes a lot of sense, but I also think we need to look at the better educating the visitors that come here. You know, the impact of 7, 8, or 9 million visitors coming. We need to do a better job of that. As an example, you know, plastics in our ocean, and work with the hotels to see how they can be better partners in doing this. Some of those small amenity bottles that go right back into the ocean. So we need to work together and do a better job of that. And yes, HTA does have the destination management plans, and whichever agency ends up executing them, I think that those plans need to be funded and supported and not be politicized. I think at the end of the day, so much of our lack of progress is because things just become too political. And I think that's really important. The other thing I would say is that we really missed the boat on understanding how unique Hawaii is, the history of Hawaii. Nobody talks about going to Iolani Palace, Washington Place. If you understand the history of this place, of Queen Liliuokalani and her life and what she did, you have a very different perspective of this state. And so as we seek to change behavior and to get visitors to understand and respect the culture, we need to make sure they understand the history of this state.
Yunji, I should add a little too. I appreciate the comments that have been made. This is also an opportunity for economic diversification. Tourism is going to continue, but we could also look at tourism as an opportunity. Health tourism, which has been mentioned, in fairness, the former First Lady has mentioned this, and I believe in this also. We could bring billions of dollars of additional revenue into the state of Hawaii because healthcare, while very expensive, is also a commodity that Hawaii can offer, great healthcare. We can do this, bring extra providers into our state, which then we can use for our people, and also, because we do tourism so well, carve out additional space and resources for health tourism. We can be the health destination, and the island that Congressman and I come from, that is a healthy, healing place. And I think that a lot of people would welcome this added opportunity into our culture to see the healing nature of Big Island and other places. This is a very good opportunity for us to increase the spend of travelers here and increase wellness.
There are a number of questions here about legalizing marijuana, so I want to get to that. I'll let you respond very quickly.
I just want to piggyback on what the Lieutenant Governor said. I also think and would think it is important to look at imposing visitor fees or user fees. You know, other locations like Hawaii have an exit tax or departure tax, and you utilize those resources to offset the environmental damages that happen throughout our communities. I think something else we can also do is do carbon offsets, where we work together with the airline industry, bring tourists into our communities, do forest replanting. There's so much that we can do, but in order to do all the great things and all the ideas we have, we need buy-in from the airline industry, from our restaurants, from our hotels, from the legislature, from community, from government. And it's going to take leadership to bring all of that together.
I want to get to, there's a question, these are basically the same question. Raymond on Facebook, views on legalizing the recreational use of marijuana in the state of Hawaii. Congressman, let's start with you.
I support that.
Do you care to expand as to why?
I think it's being done in many other states across our nation. I supported it as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives and voted, the House took a position on that. And I believe it is time to legalize recreational marijuana and utilize the resources for public education, for tourism, all the things that we need to generate revenue in this state. I think that is a viable way to do that. And I think it's only a matter of time, Yunji, before we do that. And the legislature passes a law and makes it happen.
What do you say to Raymond tonight?
I say yes. That will happen in the state of Hawaii. A couple things about legalization of recreational marijuana. First of all, medical marijuana has been very helpful for people, children who suffer seizures, other people with chronic pain or PTSD. It's been very helpful, but difficult to access. And so recreational marijuana will be often used in that space. It turns out that 97% of the people that got medical marijuana actually cited chronic pain or anxiety as their reason. So in society, people have been through a lot, and I think it will be a natural way to help. Now, beyond that, a couple things. Over age 21 and up, I think we should be safe. People are still developing. Their neurologic system is still developing as they go up into their early 20s. We have to be a little bit careful, although I don't think marijuana is nearly as impactful as opioids, and addiction there has been a great trouble for our society. In addition to that, some states have taxed marijuana, medical marijuana, but also recreational marijuana, upwards of 30%. Now that's probably extreme, but we're talking about tourists here who will probably be buying recreational marijuana, and I had a meeting even this morning about this. It could bring as much as $30 million per year to our state, and what I would use it for, although I think the Congressman also made some very good recommendations, I would use it to rebuild our public health system and our mental health care system. That's where we've been really neglecting the health care of our dear families. They've struggled so much. We need to rebuild the mental health care system, pay for social workers, pay for psychologists and psychiatrists, get them health care. There's almost no mental health care for 500,000 of our citizens right now, especially in rural areas. This would be a way to pay for it, and there's a pretty natural nexus between marijuana and then using it toward good health.
Mrs. Cayetano, where do you stand on this?
So we know that the federal law states that that's not legal. Okay, medicinal marijuana we support here. And actually it's not that difficult to get that, as you've said, even for depression or other reasons. I still ask the question of the impact on the mind, the brain on this. So given what I know, I'm never closed-minded to anything, but given what I know, I would not support recreational marijuana. And I think that, yes, the industry is certainly, it brings a lot of money, and I think that's where is a big attraction. But I think we have to look at it very carefully, especially when you do legalize recreational marijuana. There's basically no limit to what they can smoke. And that I do question it. For employers, what would they do? Drivers would be able to smoke it then? So all those questions come up. I recognize, again, there's a lot of money in this, so it's very attractive, but I think we have to look very carefully.
I want to get to the subject of guns. There are a number of questions here about guns and the recent Supreme Court decision. But there's so many questions here. I gotta go through. Here we go. This one from Virginia and Zalestra. Lieutenant Governor, we'll start with you. Where do you stand on gun laws? We're a strict state, but active shooters are becoming a huge problem nationwide. And then Virginia says, where do the candidates stand on keeping our state's protective gun laws and how we deal with the Supreme Court's new ruling on open carry of guns?
I'm very disappointed in the Supreme Court and their decision. This is personal for me also, Yunji. In my training, my medical training, and the work that I've done, I've seen many victims of gun violence. I've seen murders that have occurred. I've cared for patients who have been shot. I've cared for children who have been accidentally shot by guns that weren't adequately safeguarded. I've seen a lot of self-harm. And I also lost a cousin to suicide because she was able to get a gun, even though she was suffering from severe depression. What I think we have to do in our country is bridge the gap once and for all, demand that we get mental health care for everyone, insist that we have stronger gun laws, very possibly new ideas about gun laws like gun insurance, making people process the possibility that they are not qualified to have a gun because they have not been adequately safe in their life. There's a lot of responsibility that has to happen here, but I will tell you that more guns means more harm. More guns means more self-harm. There's a lot of depression out there that we're not managing in our state yet or across our country, so we have to do a much better job. I will tell you this, if I'm chosen by the people to be their next governor, I'll be the only physician governor in the country, and I intend to make this a public health issue nationally and lead on it from Hawaii.
What do you say to Virginia and to Zalestra about the issue of guns and gun safety?
I would echo that. I mean, that we need to, definitely implement things like insurance requiring that. I'm not sure how far we can go with background checks, but we do need to address a mental illness that is truly not being addressed enough right now in our state. What the Supreme Court has done is really a travesty, but now each state, and certainly Hawaii, needs to lead by countering with laws so that we can keep our people safer to do that.
Congressman, it seems that every day we hear about a new active shooter situation.
It's horrific.
On the mainland.
We were just talking about the former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, that potentially was, shot just a few hours ago. It's absolutely horrific, and the Supreme Court's ruling is deeply disturbing. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in the United States Congress, and we passed a bipartisan gun bill that hadn't been passed in over a decade or almost decades. Whether it's Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Las Vegas, in Chicago at the 4th of July parade last week, gun violence is at record levels in this country. We have had, and Hawaii has had, fortunately, some of the least gun violence in this country. We have very stringent, very tough laws, no doubt because of our robust gun laws, but I'm very concerned with the Supreme Court's ruling and what that means for Hawaii. I also believe, though, we need to maintain reasonable gun laws, and there's hunters on Hawaii Island that hunt and recreational gun owners and their right to own guns. They're responsible gun owners, but there's a lot that needs to be done in this state, supporting mental illness and a lot of other things that we can address as a state. But as far as the Supreme Court's ruling, it's devastating, I believe, for our nation.
Mrs. Cayetano, Hilda from Kaka'ako asks, what are your plans to address homelessness? You know, we've been talking about homelessness for as long as I can remember on this political forum and countless others. There are a lot of talk, but you walk down the street in any number of neighborhoods, and it's not just centered in just one part of town anymore. Basically, everywhere you drive, you spot folks who are in need of help. How do we give these folks the help they need, and what can the state do that the city perhaps has not done?
And, you know, in fairness, it's not only the city, it is the state, the government, that we keep talking about it at every election cycle, and I don't think anyone can dispute that it's worse than ever. And so, once again, I believe that we need to tackle this. We need a leader who can deliver with action and not just keep talking about issues and making promises and not being able to deliver. You know, homelessness is a complex problem, but it's made up of different components. One, of course, is mental illness, substance abuse. And mental illness is something that I don't believe we have the proper protocols in place right now. You know, we take them to emergency room, they get a meal, and then they're back out on the streets again. And the cycle just continues. As governor, I would call for a designated mental hospital here, and on the neighbor islands, a facility to provide what I call a continuum of services. Because with mental illness, it's managed. You shouldn't think that it's cured and that's it. You always need support, whether it's medication, emotional wellness support. You need that kind of support. And a continuum of service is the best safety net to help them not only address their problem, but to be able to get back into the community again. So mental illness, substance abuse needs to be addressed. And of course, there's one segment that's really sad, and those are those who are homeless because they can't afford the rent that's just gone up, or they can't find a house that they can afford. So affordable housing is very key to addressing that component as well.
Congressman, what are your thoughts on how to address the homeless issue, something that has not been done before?
You know, Yanji, we just can't turn a blind eye on people sleeping on our streets, people that are homeless. You know, my wife and I were just under the Kapahulu, bridge just last weekend. And then there's people sleeping all over the place. You drive along the Leeward Coast, and there's Native Hawaiians from basically Kaena Point all the way down to Kahe Power Plant. It's absolutely unacceptable. There are things we're doing. The governor just signed a law increasing more funding for Ohana zones. That's a step in the right direction. But if you talk to people at Catholic Charities and other nonprofits across the state that are doing a fantastic job and giving their heart and soul to addressing this issue, if you want to build, and we always talk about housing first, or if it's housing first, and let's build housing. And that's why it goes back to my issue about building housing at the Aloha Stadium parcel. Kahoiki Village is a great example of something we're able to do, but we were able to do that quickly because of the planning and permitting and some other issues that we were able to fast track to develop that. We need to continue to do more of that across the island of Oahu and across our state. We have veterans that are homeless. That's unacceptable. But I really believe it comes down to our values. And if we value as a state to get rid of homelessness and to help those that are homeless, then it needs to be reflected in our policies. And that requires leadership and collaboration and cooperation at the legislature, because we need the funding to do it, we need the policies to do it, and that's what this next administration is going to have to address. But we're seeing record amount of homelessness like we've never seen before, whether it's in Chinatown, or it's in Waikiki, or it's in the Waianae Coast.
What are your thoughts on how to address this issue?
Passionate about this. I've provided street medicine to the homeless, and I've talked to them about their stories, how they became homeless. It is correct that most of them are suffering either addiction or mental illness over a course of time. Almost every woman has been sexually assaulted who's on the streets. Almost every man has had physical violence against him. The PTSD is rampant, and then the self-medication makes the problem worse. Methamphetamine, of course, is a crisis that puts a lot of people into homelessness. My team has worked constantly on this matter. The numbers have been slightly declining, but it's way too large. This is what we've done. We've built kauhale. Kauhale are villages. We did one in Waimanalo, we did one in Kaleloa in partnership with the U.S. Vets and Homemade. We're now actually seeing families restored. I want to tell you the story about Jocelyn. Jocelyn is this amazing young Hawaiian woman who said she was going to take her own life because she was homeless at Sherwood's. She has 4 younger siblings. We built the Kauhale with Auntie Blanche over in Waimanalo, these tiny houses with just private sector support, and we used a piece of state land. We provide some social services. Now Jocelyn is already working through her degree. Her oldest, but younger brother just had his first prom. The next child in the family plays Dungeons and Dragons with his kids again. He's restored his life with his friends. Then the daughter in that family, the youngest one, who loves unicorns, she now has a roof over her head. And then finally, the other brother that they have, Jocelyn's brother, he used to have seizures constantly. We got him to see a neurologist. Now he has a place to put his medication. Their family is intact. I've seen other families reunited because they have a tiny home. The price point is so low. It's about $6,000 to $10,000 per tiny home, as opposed to what happens to the suffering of people. And in society, the average cost is about $80,000 per person per year if they're chronically homeless. Because, as was pointed out, each visit to the hospital, where I often am working in the ER, it's an average of $4,650 per visit. And people just come and go and come and go. They don't get any better. So we'll build 10 Kauhale. We built the H4 Center, which gets people off the streets. We have to do this in all parts of our state. And then also repurpose a lot of the properties that are not being used. People are now not at the same buildings, in the same workspace, because we've changed as a society. This opens up more opportunities. There's no reason we can't reduce homelessness dramatically, probably by 2/3 in 3 years, if we put our heart in this and we actually build the tiny homes and do the housing that's necessary in our state.
I want to get to another issue, and that is gambling. There are 3 questions here about gambling from Ann, Roland, and Robert. Thank you all for sending in your questions tonight. Congressman, how do you feel about legalizing gambling or instituting some kind of a lottery to raise money in our state? That goes to kind of another question that a viewer wrote in, which said, I love the ideas. They're all going to cost money. Where are they going to get the money? What do you think about gambling?
You know, I don't support gambling in the state of Hawaii right now. I don't believe that it matches our values and our values of aloha and the hospitality that we have as a state. And so I don't support legalizing gambling in Hawaii. I think there are other things that we can do to make government more efficient, more transparent, to maximize the resources that we have. Gambling would be an absolute last resort. Of course, governor can't do that without working with the legislature. And I don't venture to say that that's going to pass the legislature anytime soon. It's been attempted before. I don't support it on DHHL property, and I don't support it throughout our state.
Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I don't think we should play craps with our children's future, and that's really what happens. There's a lot of gambling addiction out there. One member of my family became a gambling addict, and it had a terrible effect for years on the other people in the family that loved him. And it's just so challenging when you see that form of addiction also creep into society. So I don't support legalized gambling in those ways. As far as a lottery goes, there is some enjoyment from a lottery. Everyone should be aware, though, it's not going to create very many jobs. We might be able to get people who are traveling here to spend money on lottery tickets. I don't want to be a spoil sport and say we can't have any fun, but that's probably the most that we should consider. If we ever looked at gambling, it's going to be a great challenge to control it. I know people love Vegas. Vegas has its own issues. Probably we should let what goes on in Vegas stay in Vegas.
Mrs. Cayetano.
I agree with all of that. I oppose gambling, and I think a lottery, you know, given the limited number, the population we have, is nothing like the states that have the super lotteries. Really, the yield will be little for the risks that we still are taking with that. So I would oppose gambling, period.
You know, I'm hearing a lot of synergy tonight. There's a lot of agreement on policy issues. There's some differences of opinions, but, you know, by and large, you all seem to agree. So I'm interested, Lieutenant Governor, what do you think differentiates you from your opponent outside of the policy issues? What do you think makes you the best candidate for this?
These other 2 individuals are very good candidates and very good people. I just have a different set of experiences. I came to Hawaii to be a physician with the National Health Service Corps, so I worked in a rural community in Ka'u, took care of 8,000 people, mostly Filipino and Hawaiian people in that community. I had life experiences with them that changed me forever, and I got to see their struggles. I got to be integrated into their ohana, and so I saw what challenged them the most. And I've always translated those experiences, first in the community health centers and then in the emergency departments, into policy and into priorities. I saw people suffering without treatment, without access to mental health care. And so I passed legislation increasing the tobacco tax to put money into those services and to create a trauma system and build a cancer center. I saw kids not getting care when they were on the autism spectrum. I saw that actually as a member of their extended ohana as their doctor, and then we made that a reality to get them care. So these are the experiences I have. And then of course, during COVID, I was the one that had to own much of the response. I'm very grateful for our healthcare heroes. They were amazing. I'm grateful to have worked with people in Department of Health and General Hara. But that experience was the experience of a lifetime for a person that is going to be first lieutenant governor and then ask people to trust him or her as governor. I dealt with a crisis for 2 years, and during those 2 years, we had the best result in the country, the lowest mortality rate and the lowest infection rate. It was very difficult decisions, but these were life-altering leadership experiences, which do, I believe, set me apart from anyone running Democrat or Republican.
Mrs. Cayetano, what do you think differentiates you from your two opponents?
Well, I'm very honored to be in their presence, and they have different skill sets. I would say that if you had a broken arm, I would not want to be seen. You just come see me. You should see a doctor. If you want to fly to Vegas, you should go to Congressman here who's a pilot. But running the state government is like running a very large corporation. And the things that's missing, that we keep hearing about, the problems, and never seemingly able to create the action we need to address them, that's what I bring to the table. 34 years of proven leadership, collaboration, because the legislature is an equal partner, and we need to work together to make things happen. Looking at the problems that we have now, they're not going to be resolved with the same traditional way of thinking. You need a new mindset. And bringing transparency, accountability, and a sense of urgency, that's in my DNA. And that's what makes me, in my mind, ready to lead the state.
Congressman, what differentiates you from your opponents?
I'm a local boy, born and raised here in Hawaii, raised in Hilo, product of our public education system, graduate of Hilo High School, product of the University of Hawaii, went to HCC, UH Hilo, and UH Manoa, where I played volleyball for the University of Hawaii Rainbow Warrior men's volleyball team. I was raised in Hilo, but really raised down in Miloli'i, Hawaii's last native Hawaiian fishing village, by my dad, the late State Senator Gil Kahele, and my kupuna, who imparted the values of aloha and lokahi and malama and pono in my life. I took those life experiences at the University of Hawaii to the Hawaii Air National Guard, where today I'm now 21 years in the Hawaii Air National Guard as a lieutenant colonel, and I still continue to serve. Went to the Hawaii State Senate, not because I wanted to run for office, because my dad died, and 2 days before he passed away, he asked if I would replace him in the state Senate. I'm forever grateful to Governor David Ige for giving me the opportunity to fulfill my dad's last dying wish. Went to the Hawaii State Senate for 4 years, chaired the Higher Education Committee, chaired the Water Land Committee, probably one of the most divisive, tough committees in this state. And I took that experience to the United States Congress as the only candidate who's walked the halls of Washington, D.C. and has any federal experience. That's what I'm bringing back to Hawaii. It is a value add to the state. My experience in Washington, some of my staff in Washington, I have seen firsthand the disconnect between the state of Hawaii and Washington, D.C. I want to bridge that and bring back so much necessary federal funds and grants for Hawaii that I really believe will make a tremendous difference for the state.
I want to get to some more of the personal stuff because I really love it, but I would be remiss if I did not bring up water and Red Hill because this is an issue that the next governor will obviously have to manage in great detail. Ernie Lau has said that we may have to prioritize developments when it comes to who gets water and who doesn't. We've talked a lot about affordable housing tonight. You can't build new homes without infrastructure, and that infrastructure, of course, is water. Congressman, I'll start with you. Do you think that certain development should be prioritized over other? And if we have to start to make that calculation, who gets water?
That's a difficult decision you have to make. Water, we can't live without water. Water is our most precious resource. Ola ika vai. Red Hill was a catastrophic event for the island of Oahu, and it was years in the making. as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, helping and working together with the other members of the delegation, we led the efforts on the position that the United States Navy ultimately took. Was it was time to defuel, decommission, and shut down Red Hill. They can't do it fast enough. And the fact that the Board of Water Supply has had to take offline the Halava Shaft and other nearby major water resources that feed the Board of Water Supply and ultimately would feed new developments is a travesty. It's why just last week in the House Armed Services Committee, I was able to get $200 million into the House version of the NDAA to do exactly what the Board of Water Supply is asking for, to drill new wells, drill new Sentinel wells, and to ultimately be able to pull more yield for not just the Board of Water Supply system, but for the Navy's water supply system, so we can provide clean, fresh, safe, healthy drinking water to Oahu residents and our military service members.
Mrs. Cayetano, how do we prioritize development if water is limited and could be for some time, given the constraints that Red Hill has now put upon us and the drought, of course, that we are experiencing statewide?
So I just want to say kudos to Congressman for doing that. That's why we need a strong congressional delegation to help with this issue, which, as you have acknowledged, we've known about for way too long period of time. Water is precious not just here, not just Red Hill, but on all the islands. I think, first of all, from the state perspective, we need to make sure that we're maintaining the reservoirs and dams appropriately. I am sure that, with the situation a few years ago and the cutbacks, some positions were eliminated. We need to make sure we're restoring those positions so that we can properly maintain our reservoirs and our dams. With Red Hill, I think it's so important that we work with the congressional delegation and the Navy. And I would say to the Navy that this is important, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because very candidly, there are so many other issues involving the military here in our state. And so it behooves both sides, the state of Hawaii and the military, to work together because there's, again, so much is at stake. And they need to address this with a much higher level of urgency, as Ernie Lau has indicated. 2 years is just not acceptable in my mind.
Lieutenant Governor, how do we prioritize who gets water and who doesn't, given the constraints that we're facing?
Well, we should really reframe the question a little bit. We have to prioritize health first. Health has to absolutely be first, because the day that this catastrophic incident became evident, I was actually the acting governor. The governor was traveling, and I went straight for Red Hill. I went and saw the families. I saw about 7 families, all of whom were already seeing just the terror of this situation. They had had some inkling that there had been an early leak, and there had been some problems with some of their children's health. All of these families were beginning to manifest health concerns. So health has to be first. So in that conversation, I first was with the families, and that was our immediate concern. But then, of course, I had to go and speak with the Admiral and the generals and demand that they shut down Red Hill. And that was a very long, very intense conversation, and they got it. They knew that there was no way that Red Hill could be going forward, but they pushed back a little bit, which was unacceptable to me and to the congressional delegation and to our state and to Sierra Club and to everyone. Within 90 days after making these demands, they did, at the Pentagon, decide that Red Hill would have to ultimately be emptied. Now, none of us are satisfied with this 2-year problem. They recently gave me a copy, and probably all of us, a copy of the 888-page report. I've read that report. It's fraught with concern because it's going to be slow. Even the shorter report is very dense and difficult to decipher where these challenges are going to be. It's going to cost billions of dollars, but I'll tell you what I told the leadership in the military. I told them, don't just think that you have to move this fuel above ground. If you want to be a part of our ohana here in the state of Hawaii, you have to actually help us build housing. You're going to have to invest money. You're going to have to bring new water online, like the Congressman definitely fought for appropriately. You're going to have to do all of these things. You're going to have to invest in desalinization technologies. You're going to have to work with so many people, because we have not only a health concern for thousands and thousands of our people, but we now also are bleeding into our housing concern, which is, as we all discussed earlier, our largest crisis in our state. Not a health crisis, a human crisis. So we will have to rely on the military. This is also going to impact some of the other decisions we make with the military. For instance, Pohakuloa is in many ways the 800-pound gorilla in the room. We have to have the right relationship with the military as we consider going forward. they have to heal this wound. And that means with water being life, they have to purify our water, and they have to help us build the housing.
Well, on Pohakuloa, and I want to get to that, but do you think that that lease should be renewed?
Only if the military lives up to all of its promises in the state of Hawaii. And I do think it ultimately should be renewed because it's very central to our defense of country. It's very central to what we are when we prepare our men and women, and actually much respect to Congressman for his service in the military. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. Also, they do need this region. I lived on Big Island for decades, and I'll tell you, it's central to everything that's going on in the war theaters outward. But that lease cannot be renewed unless we have the right relationship with the Navy and Army.
Congressman, do you think that that lease should be renewed?
How the military handled Red Hill is putting all of those leases in jeopardy. There are 19 leases that all expire by August of 2029, which lease approximately 45,000 acres from the state through the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Three most critical leases that the Indo-PACOM commander has said that they absolutely need moving forward is the Pacific Missile Range on Kauai, Kaena Point for the U.S. Space Force, and Pohakuloa. I have called for returning lands back to the state. First member of Congress to ever call for the return of Makua Valley. I'm also calling for the return of Dillingham Airfield that the Lieutenant Governor and I visited about a year and a half ago. The military should not be holding other lands as pawns for Pohakuloa. Should we extend a new lease to Pohakuloa? I'm not sure. It is absolutely critical for military readiness. 25th ID needs it, the Marines need it. However, there's so much we need to do differently. I don't know if they need the footprint that they need. There's UXO that needs to be cleaned up. How they train there needs to be addressed. This is, again, it's the Mauna Kea issue, it's a TMT issue, it's Red Hill, it's all of these issues that affect the Native Hawaiian community, which is why I really believe having a governor who is Native Hawaiian, who is a military combat veteran, who understands how the military thinks. We have not had a military veteran as governor of Hawaii since Governor Ariyoshi over 40 years ago. That's something that I believe I bring a unique perspective, experience, lens, skill set to the office of the governor. And I think it's critical for Hawaii.
Do you think that Pohakuloa's lease should be renewed?
It's very important, not only to the state and to the country, but really globally as well, especially as you consider where Hawaii is and what's going on between North Korea and China. But with that said, I don't think it's renewed under the same terms. I think we have to take this into consideration with the whole landscape of our relationship with the military as it relates to Red Hill and all the other bases as well. So renew, yes, but not under the same conditions. We need to also take into account and listen to how the community feels about these leases. And that's what I would strive to do.
I also think we probably all agree that dollar-a-year leases
That's
is
right.
over.
It's ridiculous.
It's over, Yanji.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. Even as a junior legislator in my second term, I actually took the military to task on Pohakuloa because they were dropping 2,000-pound dummy bombs into fields where there was depleted uranium. We were seeing high risks of cancer in that area, and it was really horrifying, many of the local residents. They actually changed after I really stood up to them. And so we're going to have a governor who will stand up to the military, but also work with the military provided that there is collegiality. And I think that's what we'll achieve because no one wants to see these disasters like at Red Hill.
Let's get to a little of the personal questions that I referenced earlier. And these can be quick answers. We don't have to take a long time because I want to get to a few of them if we can in the last few minutes that we have. Mrs. Cayetano, besides your family, what's one thing you can't live without?
Music. Music and my faith, I think those are two things that really keep me going.
Lieutenant Governor?
What can't I live without? I can't live without time with my children. I guess you said family.
Besides family.
Besides family. Something fun. Some people say I can't live without the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have that in my blood. But I don't know. I work so much, and all I've got is my work and family.
Perhaps it's work. Congressman, besides your family, what's one thing you can't live without?
The gym. Our health, our fitness is so important. I haven't been to the gym in about, I don't know, a couple months. We're just working, 18 hours a day, and it just affects our mental health, our mental well-being. Going for a run, working out is super important to me. I'm sure as all of us would agree. That's something that I really, really, really don't want to live without.
Okay, well, when you're not working out and you're not counting calories, what's the food that you most like to indulge in?
The food. I love poi. I love growing we have a garden in Hilo, a small garden, and we grow our own kalo, and whether it's table kalo or poke or poi, I just enjoy our local foods and our canoe crops, I guess you could say.
Mrs. Cayetano, when calories don't count, what do you like to indulge in?
Well, I'm a vegetarian, so anything from the garden I enjoy.
And Lieutenant Governor?
I love shave ice and I love pizza. So I'm going to take two, and I want to say, Congressman, he may not be working out, but he looks good.
Was it shave ice or ice shave?
It's shave ice.
What island are you on?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mrs.
Cayetano, what do you think is your biggest flaw?
My biggest flaw? Probably patience. I always keep telling myself I need to be more patient.
Congressman?
I'm too serious sometimes. I need to smile more.
I don't get that from you.
No.
Sometimes I just need to enjoy life, and juggling all the different hats that I juggle is tough, and it is challenging, and being a good husband and a good father, and holding it all together is pretty difficult. We do the best we can.
What's your biggest flaw?
I just can't stop working, and it's become an issue, I guess. But I've kept these two lives going, public service and being a physician all these many years, and people constantly comment, you look too sleepy, you're running yourself ragged, you got to be there for your family long term, and those are all correct. So everyone out there is watching tonight, and yeah, I get it, but I'm going to try to find the better balance going forward if I'm governor.
Okay. Congressman Kahele, what leader, past or present, do you admire most?
It's my dad. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my dad, Gil Kahele. He just, raised me to be the person I am today, instilled values in me that I carry wherever I go. I'm just so fortunate to have had him in my life. I wish he didn't pass away at 73 years of age. I'd give anything for him to be in the Hawaii State Senate right now, continuing doing what he loved to do. And, that's not where life intended for me to go, but it would be my dad.
Mrs. Cayetano, what leader, past or present, do you admire most?
Patsy Mink, because she really, in that time for a woman to be so strong, and with what she did with Title IX, she changed the lives of girls and women and people forever. So I would say I admire her the most.
Okay, and Lieutenant Governor?
Senator Akaka. Senator Akaka was a great Hawaiian leader. He was a great humanitarian. He had the greatest heart I ever got to know in politics. He spent a lot of time with me in his later years. The building that I've been living in Honolulu, especially when serving in the legislature, was where, as he retired in his later years, would work out. And he was working out slow on that treadmill, like 1 mile an hour. And he would lecture me and tell me about the experiences he had with world leaders and his experiences with Hawaii. He was just a magical person. He was one of the gentlest leaders I've ever seen, and we don't have much of that any longer. So I believe he was one of the great leaders that we should model our lives after if we're in office.
Mrs. Cayetano, if you couldn't vote for yourself in the primary, which of your two opponents would you choose?
Well, I'm running, so I have to say I would vote for myself.
But if you could, if you had to choose between the congressman and the lieutenant governor, who do you think would be best suited for the office?
Yanji, I would say this. I wouldn't be in this race if I thought candidly that either of them would be a better governor. And I'm doing this at this stage of my life because I care very deeply about the people and about the state. And with all respect to both of them, I think I have the kind of skill set that's needed to lead the state in a new direction.
Lieutenant Governor, could you choose either of your two candidates?
Yeah, I could. I would vote for Kai if I couldn't support myself, The reason being, there's nothing disrespectful to Mrs. Cayetano, but Kai and I share some roots on the Big Island. We have a neighbor island perspective. I did greatly respect his father. He's a very dear human being. And Kai has a different energy that I think that we've been friends over the years. I mean, we're punching each other in the face a little bit now during this campaign, and there are moments, and that hurts me because, you know, we have a relationship that I'm sure will be restored over time that goes way back. And we actually were allies in the Senate. And so a lot of the things we value, I respect. He was fighting for some issues in the Senate, which I also believe in, like at the time, Senator Kahele was working on a promise to get everyone education for community college. It's something I'm fighting for now. We have a lot of things in common. Now, look, I don't want to vote for him. I want to vote for myself. But there are some similarities there, and I think that we bring that kind of intensity that Hawaii is going to need. But again, if people end up choosing Mrs. Cayetano, good human being. So you can't go wrong, I hope, with any of the three of us, and I hope people will support us over the Republican nominee no matter what happens.
Oh, Congressman.
Just on the spot.
I know. Well, that was quite the olive branch. So.
Oh, wait. I mean, with all due respect to the former First Lady, you know, I've served with Lieutenant Governor of the State Senate, and if I had to not vote for myself, as we all would, I would vote for the Lieutenant Governor. He did his best to lead us through COVID. I'm sure there are mistakes that he would admit he made, but bringing his experience as a medical doctor, and I hope learned from mistakes that you know, we did as a state, would best position the state for a future pandemic. You know, God forbid that would ever happen. But you know, I have seen him in action in the state Senate. We did serve together, ties to Mokokeawe on Hawaii Island. Disagree on things from time to time, but if I had to vote, I'd vote for Lieutenant Governor.
Okay, well, we're just about 4 minutes out, and so I want to get to our last question of the evening. You have about a minute each to answer. Lieutenant Governor, we'll start with you. What's a challenge in your personal life that you've overcome? And you can take about a minute each on this. And how has that prepared you for this job?
Well, I did allude to it earlier in our conversation. I was born with a deficit. I couldn't hear. And throughout the early childhood years that I was getting educated, and my parents spent extra time trying to prepare me for the world, it was very difficult. I was a slow reader. I didn't get to participate in regular school classes in the early years, and it took a long time to catch up. That was very difficult. It set really a trajectory for me, which made me feel for many years as though I wasn't an equal with others. It gave me incredible drive. It made me work harder than most people could imagine to catch up. And once I did finally find my stride, and you know, of course I was then succeeding in school, that drive had already been instilled in me. And that's what people have seen. That's why the 2 careers. That's why the caring leadership I've tried to provide is right on the ground with people who are also struggling and suffering. That's what happened in my life. And a lot of people, when they don't know me, they wonder why I'm so passionate about all the things that I do. It was because I know what the consequence would have been had I not gotten that opportunity, and I'm forever grateful for it.
Congressman, what's a challenge in your personal life that you've overcome, and how has that prepared you for this job?
You know, I've always wanted to be a pilot, and actually I grew up wanting to be an astronaut, like Ellison Onizuka. And when I was a little kid, I looked up, how do you become an astronaut? And I saw that most astronauts were military fighter pilots. And in 1999, I was given the opportunity of a lifetime, selected by the Hawaii Air National Guard to be an F-15 pilot. That was my dream, to come home to Hawaii, fly F-15s for the Hawaii Air National Guard, eventually became the F-22. About 2 years into my training, I was in the last part of the course. I was flying F-15s in the early stages of the program in Klamath Falls, in Kingsley Field in Oregon, and I had a difficult time air refueling. And after a few flights, I just wasn't able to get it. My mind, my hands just wasn't clicking. And I washed out of the program. And that was devastating for me because you know, I was just months away from coming back to Hawaii to fly F-15s in the Hawaii Air National Guard. I had to overcome that. I gave it all I could. But then I had to pivot and go to another flying career that would lead to the C-130 and eventually the C-17. So that was a difficult time in my life where I had to overcome failure, overcome adversity, when I did everything I could, but I just couldn't achieve my goal, and that's something that was very challenging for me.
Mrs. Cayetano.
I think it would have to be when I was a single parent and trying to raise my 2 kids. And honestly, I would never have been able to do it without some help from my parents. And I think when you're a single parent, you're trying to, keep your priorities of your children, but you have a job, you have employees that you need to take care of. And of course, starting a business is always very challenging, even in the best of times. And so I think managing that and not feeling guilty about it, because what priorities do you put first? You say your children, but then you have a situation at work that you need to respond to. You have your responsibilities to your employees. So I think those were the most challenging years. But I think what I took from that is that you do somehow find a way to make things work. Whether you're multitasking and making your children understand that they're always your number one priority, but that sometimes there are things that get in the way. It helps them also to grow up knowing that the world doesn't just revolve around them. They're part of the journey. And so I think that would be my toughest time lesson learned from life.
Thank you all for sharing those thoughts tonight. Mahalo to you for joining us. Of course, we do thank our guests, the Democratic candidates for governor, U.S. Congressman Kai Kahele, businesswoman Vicky Cayetano, and Lieutenant Governor Josh Green. Next week on Insights, it's been more than a decade since a Republican sat in the governor's office. 10 candidates are running in the GOP primary, and we'll hear from several of them on where they stand on the issues facing our state. Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.